in our city. So this is the broad range of activities that our club does. And every month we have a fellowship meeting in which we invite speakers of repute. And in this COVID times, we've been having 2 speakers for the last 6 months, and privileged to welcome you again. So over to you, Wing Commander Jaidev Desai. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for such a kind word for me. And I'm very thankful to you for that. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Perfect.
Perfect, sir.
Thank you very much.
Perfect.
First of all, good evening to all the viewers. I would first like to thank the Rotary Club of Cosmopolitan Ahmedabad and Rotary Club of Juhu, Mumbai. Especially, I would like to thank Veteran Air Marshal P.K. Desai, sir, and Mr. Hiten Mehta of Rotary Club Cosmopolitan Ahmedabad for extending this invitation to me and for having faith that I will be able to explain 360 degrees of geopolitical reasons of the actions by China recently. And of course, the august audience who have logged in for this session, but the most important for the seminar. And I'm really thankful to all of you. Thank you very much. In my presentation, basically, I would broadly cover the topics as shown in the slide. First of all, I will try to understand reasons of this adventure by China at this time. And that I will break it down in some historical facts, Chinese policies, relation with other countries and Indian policies. Thereafter, we would compare the Air Force arsenals of both the countries and other aspects related to that. And then I shall try to give my opinion and would dare to stick my neck out, discussing what can happen now and how solution to this situation can be found. Or rather, I would say that how this could play out in future. And at the end, I would conclude.
Why is this button not working?
Let's talk about China and its recent policies. In India, the Indian problem with China is quite well known to all of us. But it was not like that always. China and India were the largest economy till about 17th century. We combined used to hold more than 50% of the world GDP. Our relation started some 2000 years back as what is recorded in the history. Fa Hin was the first visitor to India from China in around 400 AD. That is about 2400 years back. Also, you'll be surprised to know that even in Mahabharata and manuscript, Manusmriti, etc., in our old scriptures, China is mentioned. Original Mahabharata of Ved Vyas, if you read, it says that gift was brought for Pandavas during celebration of Rajasuya Yagna from China. Also, Manusmriti mentions China, as I said, and our scriptures talk about contact with Indian subcontinent called Bharat with China through northeastern region as we know today. However, as we know through modern and recorded history, regular exchange of culture, ideas, and trade continue after the visit of Fa Hin and Yu Minqing. Buddhism and its effects on Chinese culture and thinking is well known. You'll be surprised that in 3rd century and thereafter, many Hindu temples also came up in China, especially in Guangzhou and other areas. Nalanda University received many Chinese students regularly. For trade and other communication, Southern Silk Road, as it was known, was established between the two countries some 2000 years back. Till about 18th century, India and China combined, as I said, was controlling about more than 50% of GDP of the world. Till about 16th century, Indian GDP was more than China, and thereafter China GDP took over India's GDP. That is why India was called Sone ki Chidiya, and all from Europe traveled to India in search of wealth and prosperity. China therefore feels that it was a powerhouse couple of centuries ago, and it deserves and wants to regain that glorious position on the world stage. Actually, India and China earlier had no common border. But today we share more than 4,000 kilometer long border. That is because China believes in eating up of territories of neighboring countries. The map on the left shows and denotes the original China and the territories around it. It has consumed. This includes part of Ladakh, eastern Turkestan, Tibet, Yunnan, South Mongolia, Manchuria, and so on. And with all this, recent map of China is as shown in the slide on right. As recent as in July, they also claim the city of Vladivostok of Russia as their territory. It also claims Senkaku and Diaoyu Island of Japan as their territory. India and China has common border because China occupied all these countries that are or regions called Yunnan, Tibet, and East Turkestan. Thus, the expansionist policy of China is well known and seen by the world for so many years. And India is not the only country that is affected because of China's this policy. Our PM is speaking very loudly about the same. In South China Sea, China is bullying all the countries of the area. They have extended their marine boundaries in South China Sea by creating artificial islands. Also, they flex their muscles in South China Sea, and it is occupied many small islands and have created many artificial islands also, as I said. And through them, they have been claiming marine territories of many countries in that area. For example, the Parcel Island, what is shown on the map on top, and created plenty of unhappiness among all the countries in that region. The Parcel Island basically was occupied in 1924, and Spratly Island and many other islands also were occupied by them. Taiwan and Hong Kong problem is already well known to all of us. I'm sure you know that China lost the case of maritime boundary claim in the international court against Philippines, but they have refused to accept the judgment, and they are following the bullying tactics with Philippines. Recently, China has allowed their Coast Guard to carry conventional weapons and use them if required, and that is the dangerous in this region. After the death of Mao Zedong, when you talk about the China and recent policies, let's talk about last 50 years. In 1926, Deng Xiaoping initiated drastic changes and encouraged commercial international trades. Nixon, the president of USA then, helped China in bringing them in the center stage of the world commercially. With US support, China prospered. USA saw China as a big market. But China played smart and put the condition that the companies must manufacture their products in China. That helped USA companies to expand and take advantage of huge Chinese market. But China could build up the manufacturing capabilities because of this. China grew at about 9% plus for so many years and gained economical strength. Their GDP quadrupled in 15 years. With this growth, they started building their own industrial and R&D, military capabilities, and so on. Many projects for indigenous development of manufacturing of military hardware were initiated. However, China had no respect for intellectual property of US and Western countries. They created their products initially by just copying the product of these companies. All this they started way back in mid-90s. As they grew in confidence, they dreamed to become the superpower and aim to replace USA as #1 power in the world. That was planned to be achieved in 50 years. That is by 2035 or 2040. But as it stands, we do see that they implemented their plans very effectively, and they are giving run for the money to USA. And with their economical military stand, they are threatening all its neighbors, including India. Belt and Road Initiative, that is BRI, is one of the very famous policy of China. It is also called One Belt, One Road, that is OBOR. And it is a well thought out, intelligently planned and executed strategy of China to increase its influence and gain control over beneficiary countries. In this, they create international standard infrastructure in willing countries. The initiative has both land and marine routes as shown in the slide. Total fund made available is about 1 trillion USD. That is about 40% of the Indian GDP. So you can imagine the type of money power and money muscle what they are using for this initiative. This infrastructure is built with the money given to them as loan. The loan term is required to be kept private and not to be publicized. The interest rates is kept generally high in a way that most of the cases beneficiary country is not likely to be able to pay back in time. The loan is extended against some strategic infrastructure of the country like port, some mines and so on. Generally, even political capital is also kept under control. In all this, political patronage is ensured and China assures access to the political influencing capabilities so as their interests could be furthered. Like what we know about Nepal and Pakistan is already there in front of us. Also, contract to build this road infrastructure in the country is given to Chinese companies. This assures money is plowed back into China. As on date, about 70 countries have become part of the BRI. 13 are from Europe. Russia and almost all of our neighbors have joined China. This initiative used very intelligently by them to get them in debt trap and make them follow China policy. Providing loan at higher rate and then taking control of the infrastructure like port in the country is also a tactics used by China. India has opposed the OBOR and encourages other countries not to get into this trap. The BRI is basically a methodology to colonize the countries. Colonization of the country using economic muscle is the name of the game. This also provides access to the territory and rights of their use by Chinese forces, mainly army and navy, like ports and other infrastructure. Against that, let us talk about Indian policies. We spoke about close relation between China and India going back to Mahabharata days. Relationship between India and China started worsening from 1950. Our soft policy, over-trusting the neighbor, are the main reasons of what happened in past. Also, our more than willingness to meet their demands, hoping that once that demand is met, the next demand will not be raised by them. That attitude also harm our country beyond the limits. Till about 2014, we didn't even build infrastructure for armed forces to take supply and manpower to the border area. Though China continued strengthening their infrastructure, making it possible for them to occupy more and more land of ours. Our armed forces were also not provided basic necessity of arms and ammunition, creating capacity and capability gaps. The soft policies, even when attacks on integrity and security of India were carried out, encourage our neighbors to take advantage, and they also encourage and aided separatist and terrorist groups within our countries. Problem in Northeast, Myanmar, are fueled by China. I feel that 1962 war outcome was weighing very heavily in the minds of previous dispensation, and their willingness to make India stronger to face the challenges upfront was very evident. Not building the infrastructure near borders to aid the army movement and supply chain was the stated position of previous government. Stopping even the construction like bus stand on objection by China encouraged China, and they continued to make their position stronger in border area and slowly kept occupying more and more land of India. 1962 war against China, who can forget? Here I would like to bring out that many opinion makers in TV, right from the day this situation was ignited on TV and including in from China, try to remind us of 1962 debacle and our loss. Idea is to indicate that indicate that India is not up to the mark and should not try to challenge China. Yes, in 1962, we did lose the war and lost quite a size of our land. Many reasons are discussed for our loss. These reasons could be political, military, and so on. But one important reason why we lost the war was because Indian Air Force was not allowed to play part as laid down in their charter. That is what is my opinion is. At that time, if you look at the China had no Air Force worth to be considered, whereas India had that time comparatively superior aircraft like Mysterious, Tufani, Hunters, Nats, Canberra, and so on. Most of them were available in eastern and northern borders also. Also, please remember that IF was war hardened since we did take active part in World War II, mainly during Burmese operation and many other such operations. Still, Indian Air Force was not used. I won't spend much time now discussing the same. If you want, we can discuss the same in question and answer. Whereas China had MiG-15, MiG-17, IL-28 and MiG-19 aircraft. And if you see all the airfield which were available at the time were at height. And so these aircraft were not capable to operate at that height. And other airfield were about 1,000 kilometers away. And that distance was too much for these aircraft to travel to attack India. Therefore, Indian Air Force could have had air superiority and could have changed the result of the conflict. However, in 1967, the whole scenario changed. At Nathula, PLA attacked Indian post on 11 September 1967 and at Chalo in October 1967. Aim was to control Chumbi Valley. In both these clashes, Indian Army not only pushed PLA back, but inflicted very heavy casualties on PLA. And this somehow, I don't know why, we don't talk about at all. Indian trade policy with China gave uninterrupted advantage and access to China to dump their cheaper goods in India. China took full advantage of the price-sensitive market of India. The trade imbalance in favor of China increased multifold in about last 15 years. These also kill Indian industries of certain sectors. Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, QSD, also known as Quad. It is an informal strategic alliance between Japan, India, Australia, and USA. The aim of the alliance is mainly to ensure rule-based use of Indo-Pacific Ocean region and movement of cargo in that ocean. It started as a dialogue in 2007, but now it has taken formal shape by the latest meeting of foreign ministers of these 4 countries. Recently, all the members carried out joint naval exercise in South China Sea called Malabar exercise, in which even Germany took part in a limited way by sending a frigate. China looks at this alliance as anti-China. Other than this, there are recent changes in Indian policies and attitude which we must discuss and highlight. In India, lots have changed in last 6 years, as all of us are aware of it. Following main changes are noticeable. I will not explain each, since I am sure you all have noticed them and are aware of them because they all are very recent. And this might have not liked by China. Let us see what are these. One is a change in foreign policy, keeping India first in all dealings, along with our Look East policy. Use of trade and commerce and Indian market as a diplomatic tool, which was earlier not the case. Strengthening of armed forces. I agree here, as like all of us veterans and serving officers would like much more to be done by the government. But the fact remains that the government has started looking after the requirement of the forces and Make in India in defense with Atmanirbharta, with eye on capturing export market of defense system is a noteworthy attempt by government of India. Strict maintaining laws and order. This has many limitations, though I agree, because laws and order is a state subject. Enhancing internal security by taking proactive counter actions. This we have seen and we must appreciate that in J&K and Northeast had no terror outside J&K Naxal belt since last 6 years. Solving long and outstanding issues like 370 abrogation, Ram Janam Bhoomi, and so on. Increase speed of infrastructure building up to Indo-China's border, mainly the DBO road with 255 km long. Aviation, activation of various ALGs, advanced landing grounds in Ladakh area. India also followed the policy of extending friendship hands to all worked on improving relationship with all the countries. This included friendship with Israel as well as Islamic countries. Installation of nationalist government in various European countries, Australia, and win of Trump in USA in 2016 helped in creating useful partnership and friendship at the highest possible level. India pulling out of RCEP, that is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, fearing dumping of goods from mainly China and other countries affecting domestic economy was the main reason. And that is what proves the point that we started thinking of India first in all our policies. Doklam standoff in 2017 hurt ego of China and proved the world that India has intent, ability, and strength to face China. Surgical strike in Myanmar and in POK and thereafter, airstrike on Balakot, well inside Pakistan mainland, and then successfully defending airstrike of Pak Air Force and shooting down of F-16 with MiG-21 put India as a regional power in the eyes of the world. And now the latest standoff in China, where we have been standing very firm against that. All these actions of India are of not liking of China. What China wants and why these actions? Now I think we are ready to answer this question. Is it just to grab some land in Ladakh of a few hundred square kilometers, or there is something more to it? Let us try to analyze. Let us first analyze what China did that world did not like, and what China did not like that India did. Many things we discussed till now, but additionally, we could include following points too. Many countries consider COVID-19 a biological warfare unleashed by China and want to teach China a lesson. US under Trump took the lead in this. Coronavirus softened all the countries in the world emotionally, politically, and economically. Their attention was diverted completely to take care of the domestic needs. China saw this as an opportunity to take over many companies of importance in many countries and take advantage of the situation. Also, China used the opportunity to provide required medical items to fight COVID and make money out of that too. That upset many countries. China was unhappy with India because of many things like what we discussed, Article 370 abrogation, making Ladakh Indian territory, India going close to USA, Quad, and so on. Emergence of India as a regional power was not liked by China, rather is not liked by China. This was in spite of aiding Pakistan and insurgents group in Northeast region with the idea to keep India under check with the aim to apply brakes on India's growth. This China sees India as a threat to its plan to be the lone power in Asia and to replace USA as #1 power in the world. Its logistical need to connect Aksai Chin to CPEC from Siachen side in Pakistan from Karakoram Pass. that required gaining advantageous position in Galwan Valley. Now I would like to discuss the limited political aim of China. Any military conflict anywhere in the world is actually a part of broader political aim of any country. To understand the intent and also to work out solution of the conflict, it is mandatory to understand the political and military intent of the adversary. Here I find that there is no discussion in Indian media and it about this, and that actually surprises me. Though this is not a published and spoken about, I feel that China has following limited political aim for taking this military action in Ladakh. And what are these aims? I would like to put this four following aims. One is gain control of certain points in Galwan Valley so that their plan to connect CPEC in Baltistan and Gilgit can be implemented without hindrance. That is, as per me, is a limited military aim of the Chinese move. Force India to rethink being a friend to USA and taking part in Quad and any other similar initiatives which India takes. This was mentioned explicitly by China in the early days of the conflict. They did advise India not to be friend with USA, if you remember so. Prove the world that India is not strong enough to be a permanent member of UNSC, and also not strong enough and matured enough to take larger role in the world geopolitical scenario. And that too could be a military aim. And thus be the only regional power in Asia and then the only superpower from Asia, cutting the competition from India. Let us compare the current Air Force arsenals of both the countries. And before I speak about the Air Force arsenal of both the countries, I would like to point out that many opinion makers from our countries and others compare the size of economy and size of armed forces of both the countries. And based on that, they question the ability of India to counter the Chinese challenge in military terms and also economically. To counter that, I have following to say to these people. By putting forward this argument, I feel that we have forgotten the history of the world and our own history. Let me give you examples. Lord Rama fought with mighty and very rich state of Ravana with the army of monkeys and animals, and Lord Ram won the battle and killed Ravana. In Mahabharata, Kaurava army was much bigger and it had many more numbers of Maharathis like Bhishma, Dronacharya, Duryodhan, Karna, Ashwathama, and many more. Pandava in their side did not have so many Maharathis, but Pandavas won the war. British Empire was very powerful, but still we won the freedom and managed to throw them out. Mighty USA lost Vietnam War. We can find many more examples like this. The fact remains that just economy and army size is bigger. That does not necessarily mean that mighty power will win. Yes, that surely has an advantage, that I concede, but that is not mandatory. Let us compare the Air Force size as such. As shown in the slide, China has about 1900 fighters and bomber aircraft. I'm not talking about transport and helicopters as such. I'm just talking about fighters and bombers. But out of this, if you analyze the fleet, about 1000 aircraft are of old technology and are not upgraded. Therefore, their utility against India from the heights at such altitude is likely to be doubtful. That leaves about 1000 aircraft like J-10, J-11, J-20, Su-27, Su-30 and Su-35. And Indian Air Combat Force is as also shown here. And before I talk about advantage India, I would like to answer here two main questions. First, about capability of Rafale and how Rafale gives tremendous advantage to us. because Rafale has just been introduced in Air Force, and I'm sure all of you would be interested in knowing this. And second thing is about, because many times I hear in civil side that this aircraft has got can fire 2 Mach and 3 Mach speed, that is about 2,000 and 3,000 kilometers per hour, whereas our aircraft is at least lower the speed compared to that, so they have advantage. So I would like to discuss this point and show you the comparison of certain parameters of Rafale and J-20. I will not read out this parameter, but I will give you about 5-10 seconds to go through this parameter. Kindly have a look at these parameters. Now, let me certainly explain the inner things in this. My first statement is Rafale is a 4.5th generation aircraft and J-20 is 4th generation aircraft. Actually, when J-20 was announced, they announced this as a 5th generation aircraft. It was said that in the world, after F-20 and F-35 of USA, these are the only aircraft of 5th generation in the world. But in August sometime, they downgrade the J-20 as 4th generation aircraft. And we have the doubt that it's actually 4th generation or maybe 3.5 generation aircraft. Also, if you see that Rafale Max all up weight is about 24.5 tons, whereas for J-20 it is about 37 tons. That is about 1.5 times more. But if you see the engine, the Rafale engine is about 150 kiloknot of thrust, whereas the J-20 produces 145 kiloknot of thrust. That means that engine is underpowered. They require engine of 180 kiloknot, but they are not able to install the engine of that capability even today. That means whatever parameters they are basically indicating, will they be able to meet that parameter? That is the biggest question. And I would say no. This max parameter and other things which we are talking about, they will not be able to achieve in the war zone. The most important thing here is capability of the radar and acquisition and engagement of capability. Radar is basically ASAR radar, both what they claim. The Rafale has got capability using this radar and other avionics about tracking more than 40 targets at a time. And they can engage about 4 to 6 targets at a time. J-20 radar on the other side is basically a upgrade of J-11 radar, and therefore is not likely to have this capability. And this capability of number of targets they can achieve engage at a time or track at a time, that figure is still not known in public domain. And more that, you see, basically the aircraft when in combat have got two main capabilities which we must discuss about. One is we call beyond visual range capability. Rafale has capability of more than 150 kilometers far away target can attack and destroy very effectively. Whereas J-20, though they say again they have the capability, but again that capability is not proven. The second capability is the high power, low speed handling capability of the aircraft. And that capability comes in the in use when you have the close combat requirement, like against F-16 and MiG-21. When they had the close combat, MiG-21 could go behind the F-16, and that is why you require the low speed, but you got a high power, because in case you have to run away or take a tight turn and things like that, so that capability the aircraft should have. And here, because of engine underpower of J-20, its size and all, Rafale is supposed to have a better low speed, high power capability as such. So in both higher range or the BVR capability and low speed, high power capability, Rafale is supposed to be better. So I hope this gives you some indication of Rafale capability and why we are saying that Rafale, because of Rafale now inducted in this, in our Air Force, we have an edge. And Rafale has already started or have carried out many sorties in Ladakh area. Yeah. Comparison of current. Do I go on here? Comparison of current Air Force and Arsenal. Sorry, slightly. Just 1 minute. Yeah. Slide 15. Comparison of current Air Force Arsenal. Now here we must discuss about we did discuss about Rafale and J-20 comparison, the base aircraft both the Air Force have got. But overall, how Air Force, Indian Air Force and Chinese Air Force actually compare? And what are the Indian advantages as far as I am concerned? In the first look, due to mismatch of the numbers, it appears that we are at great disadvantage. Like as I said, they have about 1,000 aircraft and we have about 600 aircraft. But let me say this, number of airfield the country has from where this aircraft can be launched is very, very important. China has just 3 airfield for launching this aircraft attack from Ladakh side. Each airfield has limited capacity to accommodate number of aircraft. Obviously, because the airfield size is limited, so number of aircraft you can keep safe in that airfield also is limited. More aircraft if you pack, and then if the airfield is attacked, you are likely to lose more number of aircraft, and that is a danger to lose the aircraft if attack increases. Their airfield is at a height. Higher the airfield altitude, lower the load carrying capacity of the aircraft because oxygen is less and you require higher runway length to take off. At higher altitude, oxygen availability is less. Therefore, during takeoff, aircraft has to keep the load less. That is why all the aircraft will not be able to carry the weapon load to its max capacity. Against this, India has all their airfield in planes except maybe Leh and Avantipur to some extent. We have about 10 airfields from where our aircraft can be well spread and can be launched with full weapon load because they are on ground. There are at least 7 ALGs, that is advanced landing ground, and various helicopters in Ladakh area, and all of them are activated now. And that eases the material supply of operation to the troops in the area and also helps in evacuation operation if required, casualty evacuation operation. Recently, during Gagan Shakti, Indian Air Force displayed its capability to launch about 11,000 combat sorties in just 2 weeks. 11,000 sorties in 2 weeks. China has no such demonstrated capability. Limited number of aircraft, number of sorties which we can launch is tremendous. That is the capability what we have. We are war hardened, and we have been carrying out exercises with best air force of the world regularly. Against this, China has no such advantage and have been exercising with Russia, Pakistan, and Turk maximum. Turk exercise with Turk has started recently. Pakistan exercise with Pakistan they started after we shot down F-16, and they realized the importance of air combat, in which they are not very good at compared to Indian pilots. And of course, our pilots are much more better trained and are supposed to be the best in the world in air-to-air combat. This is because of the man behind the machine. We have a great advantage. Against this, PLAF is not accustomed to undertake such combat. Recently, they have been practicing air combat with Pakistan Air Force, as I said. After comparing the air combat aircraft, let us now compare the missiles. In the same way, they have about 1,500 missiles of different type and range. Out of these, about 1,200 are short and medium range, and 100 are IRBM and ICBM, and about 200 to 500 are cruise missiles. IRBM and ICBM are generally used with nuclear warheads. The load carrying capacity of this missile is about 200 to 500 kg, but their accuracy is quite low. CEP, the circular error probability that defines the accuracy with which missile hits the target. Chinese missiles have this value as claimed by them 10 to 30 meters. If their Baidu GPS is not jammed. else CEP value is about 200 to 600 meters, which is very, very inaccurate. And I'm sure we have that capability to jam and take care of the electronic countermeasures as far as their missiles are concerned. Against these missiles, arsenal of India is much more potent, more accurate, and with well spread in terms of capability, usage, and range. For example, BrahMos has CEP of 5 meters. Believe in me, I have seen the video of live trials where BrahMos was released from Su-30 from 300 kilometers distance, hitting the pin right on the head. There was a circle drawn of 5-meter radius, and the center there was a pin, there's a red flag, and this missile hit the pin right on the head. That is the capability of ours. Also, we have like multi-barrel Pinaka rocket system, which is very accurate and has capability to launch 12 rockets in 44 seconds. And like that, we have a very varied range of missiles with capability and range. Further, it is pertinent also to note that China cannot deploy all their missiles for India. Problems with all other countries in South China Sea also. That is in the eastern side. That side also needs to be secured adequately. Therefore, as per my estimate, China can't deploy more than 25 to 30% of the missiles towards India. That is not more than 300 to 400 missiles. And now, because they are not going to be used, likely to be used with weapon of mass destruction, and these missiles have got capacity of 500 kg max. One missile cannot destroy more than one blast span, that is one aircraft maximum. And it is estimated to destroy one military airbase, one needs to about 60 to 70 such missiles, and assuming all hit their intended target accurately. Otherwise, this figure can go up to 100 also. So you see that their capability to destroy the arsenal of Indian Air Force or the Army is quite limited using missiles. Also, there's a chance that these missiles even hit civilian targets. Therefore, even the civilian population in that area too will require to be careful and ready to take the hit. This, if happens, will test the resolve of Indians at large. But at the same time, I must point out that Hitler in Second World War decided to hit London with hundreds of bombs after he had almost whole of Europe captured and invaded. London residents faced heavy damage and casualties, but the resolve to fight multiplied, and rest is the history. Force multiplier like AWACS, Raki aircraft, EW capability, area refueling, attack helicopters will also play a big role in the conflict. I'm not getting into details of all this, otherwise the thing will become very long. We did talk about the advantage Air Force, but what is the advantage of Indian Army? I think it is also very pertinent to note that capability advantage we have as far as Army and Navy is concerned. Indian Army is the best army in the world, very experienced and capable in mountain warfare. We have proved again and again our capabilities in Siachen as well as Kargil. In Kargil, we prevail even though we were at disadvantage because they were occupying the heights. In Siachen, we moved very fast, and first we occupied the Siachen Glacier and maintaining the advantage till date. In Ladakh, we did the same. We have occupied the Kailash range. We moved very swiftly and occupied the heights of Kailash range. This has given us tremendous advantage and bargaining power that China never expected, and I would say that they were caught unaware. We have the established supply line, and that is not the case with China because we have been maintaining Siachen and other Siachen other area our army regularly. We have the only challenge here is the number of troops has increased tenfold. Against this, Chinese army is not accustomed to leave the fight at these heights. You will be surprised to know that they are using the pressurized housing, which is created specially for them, so that they do not have problems related to lack of oxygen. But this itself could be their biggest weakness in the time of actual exchange of high power firing. They will require to come out of their pressurized accommodation, and that time they will not be climate acclimatized, and therefore their capability to fight could be reduced drastically. There are other aspects of war. Like for any war today has become multidimensional. I'm not talking about 3 dimension of Air Force, Army and Navy, but the war today can be fought even without a single bullet fired, using other capabilities, and therefore it is called hybrid warfare. These aspects of this warfare is shown in the slide. Each of these is a subject by itself. I'm not covering them here, but it is important here to speak as it about economical warfare and action taken by India. Banning Chinese applications, restricting Chinese investment in India, cancelling government orders and disallowing Chinese companies to take part in tenders, and announcing Atmanirbhar Yojana and taking various steps to restrict import of certain goods from China, announcing production linked subsidy in certain sectors are the main steps in this direction. Even anti-China feeling among Indian citizens is quite prevalent, and many have decided to stop buying Chinese goods is part of it. Many companies have initiated steps to reduce use of Chinese parts in their product is a welcome step. Here I would like to give example of my grandson, who is about 7 years old. He plays these games on a tab and laptop. But moment while downloading, when he sees any Chinese letter, he says, Nano, this is a Chinese game, so I should not be downloading it, isn't it? I said, yes, you should not be downloading it. That is the mentality and that feeling I see in most of us. If that is the case, then what lies ahead? India took strong and swift military action countering Chinese aggression. You may say that India was slow in reacting initially. Maybe yes, but then India stood up strongly. I know there were reasons why India did not act so swiftly initially, that we can discuss during question and answer session if you want. But fight on 15 May, where over 20 soldiers of India lost life, but China also lost 43 or more soldiers, and some count says more than 100 soldiers died of China. That not only unnerved China, but India got praise from all over the world. The deployment of forces, matching Chinese presence and activation, Indian Air Force in that sector made China to rethink about their future action. Indian Air Force operated all the type of fighters, helicopters, including Su-30, Rafale, Apache helicopter, and so on. Some of the advanced landing strips are activated, as I mentioned earlier. Hercules Giant is placed in operation to and from Leh. The latest Indian Army occupied all heights in Kailash Range, south of Pangong Tso Lake, the preemptive move. And from here, movement of Chinese troops are easily monitored and could be controlled if required. As of now, it appears that both sides are there to stay through the upcoming winter, and that is going to be difficult for the sides, more so for Chinese troops, because they are not accustomed with such environment. In South China Sea, US Navy moved in with 2 aircraft carriers and full fighting capabilities. Even B-52 bombers were pressed into operation. US Navy with other countries, included India, carried out exercise very near to the shoreline of China. Recently, all Quad members with Germany carried out one more exercise. At present, second part of the exercise is undergoing, as we discussed earlier. All these have created doubt in mind of China. Now, withdrawal solution without getting any hit to their prestige internationally, but more so domestically. In the absence of it, Xi Jinping may lose some control of the CCP, and that could be the main worry for him. Then what is the solution? All the military and diplomatic dialogues have not been able to diffuse situation and move the troops back. The latest dialogue which is on, but still it has not brought the solution. Last dialogue about 1 week back has given some hope of situation getting diffused, and both the parties could agree for some solution with controlled withdrawal. I presume and hope that India carries out tough negotiation with the strength of occupation of heights and does not make the same mistake we have been making earlier after winning wars. I see no solution in sight as such because we will not let go unless China withdraws their troops to their original position 2020. But as per me, our presence on the heights must continue, and that is the stand I think we are taking, and we should continue to take, and that is why the withdrawal of China is going to be difficult. As far as India is concerned, India has to fight its own battle. Therefore, India must find an opportune time to initiate military pushback at a chosen time. If the negotiation does not bring favorable results, winter may not be a wrong time for such push. Either way, unless China withdraws unilaterally, I don't see any other solution. Of course, politics is art of impossibility. Anything can happen. But let us hope that India comes out of this with flying colors at the end of this situation. At the end, I would like to conclude. And in conclusion, I would like to say that the current situation will get resolved with or without conflict. Conflict, it happens, is likely to be most probably be limited. I don't see the full-fledged war. But we need to understand and learn from what India has gone through till date. Till date, we have been very reluctant to use our power, strength and position dealing with other countries. When I talk about power, I include soft as well as hard power of ours, both. We were bending backwards to satisfy others. We agreed to partition the country to satisfy a few. We gave up UN Security Council seat in favor of China. We handed over 93,000 soldiers and land we had won and occupied in 1965 and 1971. We did not retaliate after Parliament attack on Mumbai. And without any precondition as such, we followed all these policies. The list is very, very long. But look at where it has brought us. We were reluctant to use our commercial, economical, and military power and flex our muscle. External Affairs Ministry, Commercial Ministry, and Defense Ministry were working without any common direction, coherent policy. Also, to build strong military is a very costly affair and needs large amount of funding, more so if we don't have our own domestic defense industry and R&D capability to meet our defense requirement. But to allot the required funds, ignoring our development needs, is also very difficult. Therefore, to build strong military, we require strong economy. And for strong economy, we require strong military. So that no one, basically we need to have a strong economy and strong military, both, so that no one dares to try to violate our national integrity and geographical border. But now, India has changed. India has changed the track. India today has learned to use hard military power where and when required. Today, commercial and economical interest of the country is kept in forefront while taking any decision. India has left Nehruvian concept and started walking on the road and direction shown by Chanakya. I would like to end with what Chanakya's sixth mantra of foreign policy. The second being eliminate the enemy. That is a part of his foreign policy mantra. Enemy should not be dealt with kid gloves. But the blow which we give to enemy should be so strong that either they mend their ways and leave animosity behind, or we eliminate the enemy. I'm happy that India is finally following this to some extent. Thank you very much. Jai Hind and God bless. I'm ready to answer your question and I shall try to answer them to best of my capability. If I can't, then I shall revert back on a later date. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you, sir. It was a very, very informative presentation and eye-opener, and the questions have started pouring in. I will fill the question one by one.
Sure.
The first question goes like this. Both the countries are nuclear power. When it comes to the crunch, will anyone would be reckless enough to use such weapons? Your opinion.
These are questions that only come in our mind. But unlike Pakistan, what I feel that both this China and India are quite a matured power as such, and they won't like to use the nuclear power in the limited conflict, especially. And as my estimation and concern, I don't think this limited conflict is likely to become the full-fledged war. And that, unless it becomes full-fledged war, there is no chance of becoming the using the nuclear power. Not only nuclear power, but weapon of mass destruction of any kind. I don't think that that is likely to be used. Like recently, I think yesterday only, there was a newspaper item that microwave waves are used against Indian army in Ladakh area, and some photograph was posted. But that news came out to be a false. It was basically because of the one comment by Chinese professor in China. Everybody picked it up and created this news. So as per me, as my reading goes, both are quite a matured countries, matured power, and use of mass weapon of mass destruction, including nuclear. I don't think they will do in limited warfare. And of course, the world is there to see that that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Right, sir. Second question, which is there, in modern warfare, it is estimated that position of missiles and aircraft carriers are expected to play a major role compared to aircraft. Your view on the same with respect to India's capability?
You see, like this Indian capability, though we discussed, but I would like to say very candidly one. You see, after Iraq war, actually, world has come to know that air power is the most important power of all the three. Air power actually destroys the army capability and gains certain air superiority. The first, any power which must be used is air power. And that is a mistake which we did in 1962 war, where we did not use air power, and that is why we are. As far as the naval power is concerned, as an aircraft carrier and all, yes, I agree. Like example, in our case, the Malacca state which is there, and we have the Andaman Nicobar Island, from where we can block their supply, because most of their supply actually goes to the Malacca state. So their oil and other supply can be blocked. So Indian Navy and the capability is going to play a very important role if at all conflict takes place and lasts for a longer time. And that is why if you see the Chinese action, basically through CPEC and all, it is trying to gain access to this sea or port from other side. And that is what they are using this OBOR and all what we discussed. So yes, so the naval power also is going to be important, mainly to see that the supply line is choked and they do not get the fresh input of material from the other sources. As the missile is concerned, yes, missile is basically will be used or is used. Like for example, Iraq war, I'm sure all of you remember the Scud missiles was used very effectively, because it not only, it did not create much of damage, but it did create a lot of panic in the area. As I said, the missile likely to hit the civilian target, and that can crush the will of a country to destroy the will of the country to fight. But also missile can be used effectively to counter the enemy attack. And missile is going to be important because missile is as such a quietly comparatively cheaper option to destroy the enemy strength or enemy positions. Because you don't have, aircraft is very costly, because aircraft also is a missile launching platform. When you say air to air or air to ground missile, it is basically aircraft is also taking the missile near the target, and then it launches, whether rocket or missile or whatever it is. So if you have the missile capability to take care of the targets from the longer range, then obviously it will be used. But as we discussed, right now and because of the various other geopolitical situation, missile usage will not be a very what you call a very important factor, or the factor which will decide the war. I don't think, because air power actually is going to be the main. And in this Ladakh region, our capability and ability to fight in a mountain at that height, and they're not having that experience of that. So these three factors, as far as I'm concerned, going to play a major role in conflict if at all it takes place. I hope I've answered the question.
Right, sir. Very prominent question in everybody's mind in today's scenario. Will India be able to manage a double front war situation with Pakistan and China in tandem on two different fronts?
A very, very common question, and I was expecting this question. It has come. You see, when you say two-front war, right? When it has to be full front war. For example, when toward Pakistan, we are talking about from Siachen down to Kutch, the whole border. And when talk about China, we are talking about Ladakh to northeast area, the whole border, 4,000 kilometer border. When talk about the whole border, then only you can say the full-fledged two-front war is taking place. In this case, limited war likely has limited war. So full two-front war right now we are not talking about. But because of this question, and this question is basically posed at many platforms to many of the defense experts. You see, when as far as Air Force is concerned, for two-front war, full-fledged front, we require about 40 squadrons of fighters. Whereas we have about 30 squadrons of fighters, 30, and then likely to reduce if 25 squadrons if we don't take immediate steps to increase the number of aircraft. And that is what is going to be very urgent requirement for Air Force from the government point of view. And the similar thing is for the Navy and Army also. Like number of aircraft carrier, number of lot of other things are there. So as far as Army and Navy concerned, again the same requirement is there if you really want to go for full-fledged war. But we did talk about the Operation Gagan Shakti. Now, what did Operation Gagan Shakti achieve in 2 weeks? Initially, it was they practiced the war against Pakistan. That is one war. Then suddenly they changed the thing that now suppose China enters, then what happens? The whole thing was reworked in a short time. The aircraft was repositioned and number of sorties increased in that area. And in 2 weeks of time, Air Force did about 11,000 sorties in that short time from the available aircraft. Also, the availability of the aircraft, serviceability of the aircraft. For example, we have suppose 600 aircraft. Out of 600, how many aircraft we can use on daily purpose? That means how many aircraft are unserviceable? How many aircraft are damaged? How many aircraft we can bring it back on the line as fast as possible? Runway damage, airfield damage. How do we bring back runway on time or immediately for its operation? So all that was practice, and that practice said that we will be able to match two-front war as on now. But ideally speaking, yes, we do need much more aircraft and other weapon systems, weapon launching platform and all, definitely for this. Because please remember that type of war, what we saw in 71, is not going to be the same in today. We are talking about space, we are talking about all the hybrid thing we are talking about. Killing the satellite, lot of aspects are hybrid war are there. So it is going to be the whole aspects. If you see the USA recently under Trump, they started the space command. We have a strategic command. That we don't have space command separately. We have strategic command. But USA now started the space command, realizing the importance of the space warfare. Because if my satellite is of my Recce, my navigation satellite or my military satellites, if they are killed or if they are destroyed by enemy, then I have no eyes from the sky. So that also has become very, very important. So it is not only fighter aircraft or number of squadron, but all-round capability to take on the new challenges. These are challenge for India. And for this, again, we require funding. For funding, we require economical growth. For economical growth, we require strong military. So again, this is a anda pale ke murgi pale. So that question comes, and we need to live with it, and we need to do our best with available resources in terms of military hardware and in terms of economy. And I'm sure the present armed forces, all the three, are capable to take on any challenge and ensure that we win. Like what we say in Air Force, I mean armed forces, that we don't want war, but if war is thrust upon us, we shall fight and fight to win. So that is what we say, and that is what we practice. Thank you very much.
Right, sir. Unusual question for you, sir. Your presentation gives sense of pride for the combat power our country has achieved. However, will we be able to match the technological and manpower speed which we have recently seen in Wuhan hospital building and handling corona in that country?
See, again, it is unusual as such because it's not only talking about the military or defense thing, talking about various other aspects. Now, let us understand few things. What about that creating the military, military hospitals, or that even you must have heard that within 1 week they can create the building of a 50-story building and all. See, this is a technology which we are talking about. I agree that we are slightly lacking behind in technology. If we are there doing 7 days in Chandigarh, our Punjab, there's a case that we have done similar thing in about 20-story building in say 30 or 40 days and all. Right. Similarly, for example, when Delhi, the previous time when Delhi Chief Minister had given up the hope and Amit Shah had to intervene, a 1,000-bed hospital was created within 3 to 4 days. So all that we have done. You see, generally, I personally feel that we have a habit as an Indian, and I don't blame individual X and Y, but our society, the way we have been trained, the way we've been educated, we have been made to be underconfident. Though we forget that we have done a lot of good things there in our country. Like example, as I said, the man behind the machine, I'm sure Air Marshal Desai and we all have seen so many things that, like any aircraft, weapon system, what we get from any country, we have proved that we can operate that system and maintain the system much better than their country. Because we, like example, Sukhoi aircraft and MiG-29, we had to overhaul the aircraft when they had no aircraft to be overhauled. They had not flown so much, and we taught them how to do it. So we need to be more confident. We have to come out of this, and we need to realize and believe that we are better than the best. Like example, same you and me. When we are in India, we think that we cannot do this. White skin chap is better than us. The same me and I go to USA, we become the better than the best. I mean, all the CEOs of all technology company is headed by Indian. Why is it so? Why? I mean, we need to be more confident. All these things, we can do it here. Yes, we have economically, we are slightly low. I mean, we are only 2.6, 2.7 trillion economy. Militarily, we have less hardware and weapon launching system because of the fact, again, economy is low. We have low capability of defense manufacturing. One of the reason they could go ahead much more because of their economy, number one, growth, and second, they don't respect IPR. We are a democracy. Again, because of that, we'll be slow compared to them because they are not democracy. And we respect IPR. We don't violate the IPR laws and licensing restrictions, licensing manufacturing restrictions put on us. So these are the environment which we are working with. But I strongly believe that we are better than the best. And I can keep giving you example when I went to France for Mirage engine overall training and all. I have seen that my technician is the best in the technician in the world. And our Indians who have gone abroad, they proved it. So I don't think we need to be worried about it. Only thing, we have to be more confident. The underconfidence has to go out of the window from our mind. And then I'm sure we'll be able to achieve the heights and we'll be able to take any challenge what we face in the world.
Right, sir. I think this is supposed to be the last question on the line. Do you think our strength in software are optimal to protect our systems from Chinese hacking? A. B. Can we leverage this skill to harm China? The other way around.
See, here I'm not a very much software expert, but I would like to put one comment here because software thing is there. I cannot resist from saying so. We are supposed to be software power, right? But I'm sorry to say, like company like Infosys or whatever company you talk about, we are creating technology for others. IPR is theirs, but not ours. You name an application, you name a software of Indian origin, which is used by the world. Nil. Right? Notwithstanding that, the question about our hacking capability and all, well, China is supposed to be the best hackers in the world. There's no doubt about it. They are giving a run for the money even to USA for their hacking. But I think as on today, we are able to withstand that onslaught. Last about 6 months, their hacking onslaught has increased tremendously, about 3 to 5 times. The only advantage what we have and wise decision what we have taken, unlike US and other Western countries, there are Air Force, Army, Navy and all, they are not connected to internet. We have our own standalone system, and that is why the possibility of hacking that system is not as high as generally you would tend to believe. Like our EVM, the election, the electronic voting machine. Since internet is not connected, and so it is not hackable. So I tend to believe that Indian Air Force, AFNet, which we are using, and similarly Navy and Army, where nowhere it is connected with internet and all. So sitting at some other country, you cannot get into the system unless you try through our satellite and thing like that and all. So yes, it is difficult, possible, but so far we don't have much of a problem, and hopefully we will continue to fight that thing.
Thank you, sir, for your various inputs, insight, in-depth presentation. I now request Kala Sridhar, President of Rotary Club Juhu, Mumbai, to give you the closing. Over to you, Kala.
Thank you, Hitenji. Jaydev sir, Wing Commander Jaydev sir, it was such a pleasure hearing you. The presentation, as somebody mentioned in the chat also, it was so, these were the things which we are not aware. We are reading the papers, we are watching the news, but the way you explained it so simply, it's really, something we gone back to, those days when in the schools the teachers used to give us diagrams and, explain to us the theorems and all that. You explained it very simply to us. And one more, this was as your grandson tells you that it's a Chinese app, so I will not download the game. That is the thought that should come into each and every Indian's mind, which will surely make a change. And we are sure that what has happened in the past, our country will not make the same mistake again, and we will not give up, and we will, and after hearing you and hearing about all the Rafale and J-20 and all that, no, it is like our confidence is increased in all our capability of our army and our armed forces, all the 3 forces. Thank you so much for this lovely insight. Rotary Club of Metropolitan Ahmedabad has always been, the speakers. We from Mumbai Juhu are partner attending there, doing the joint meetings with them because their speakers are all very from different fields and very interesting. And we have been the co-host for most of the speaker meetings with them. Thank you, Rotary Club of Cosmopolitan Ahmedabad, for this opportunity. We had around 25 participants today, and we also have a president from Rotary Club of Trichy Midtown, Ganesh, also, who has joined us today. Thank you, Ganesh, for joining. And once again, thank you for this opportunity to listen to you. Thank you, Rotary Club of Cosmopolitan Ahmedabad.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you, Prakash. Thank you,
Thank you.
Prakash bhai.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash.
I'm logging out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you once again. Samita ji, it was. Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Narendra ji.
Bye.
Arun, bye. Bye, Ashish. Bye, Ganesh. Thanks
Bye,
for joining.
Kailash. Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for joining.
Bye.
Thank you,
Good night.
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.